Hello, Crystal.
Hey,
How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Welcome to my podcast.
Thank you. I'm so
I'm
proud of
so,
you.
oh, thank you. Thank you. So, I just want to give you a moment to just introduce yourself to the audience.
My name is Crystal Byrd. I am a mother. I am a wife. I am a photographer, business owner, artist, many things.
Yes.
I'm originally from the San Francisco Bay Area. I have been living here in Atlanta, back and forth between 2000 and now. So, went to
Mhm.
college here, graduated from the illustrious Clark Atlanta University, and ended up going back home to the San Francisco Bay Area to kind of just rediscover who I was. And then
Yeah.
ended up coming back here to Atlanta, kicking and screaming, but finding my way. As they say, at
Yes.
the Clark Atlanta motto is find a way or make a way. I think I found my way and made my way back here in Atlanta.
Absolutely. And that theme comes up a lot, just from what I know from your career. So, okay, so I
Mhm,
remember meeting you. It was right after you had just come back to Atlanta.
mhm,
You had your two oldest girls at that point, I believe, right?
mhm.
And so I just remember you were so nice and so sweet. And the first time I was like, oh, wow, she's really talented, as you emceed an event. It was one of the Atlanta Mother's Day fashion shows. They have Atlanta Mashup Al Islam has an annual fashion show, and you were the MC. And I was like, okay, she got it together. And I think a little bit at that time you were playing a little bit with photography, your thing, right?
Mhm.
And so, but then I started watching, and I'm like, wow, Crystal is so talented, alhamdulillah, praise God. And when you started to build your business, I was like, it was so heartwarming because when you meet people and you've known them, you came in 2000, so we've known each other for 2 decades in a nutshell,
Mhm.
right? And you see their growth. For me, it feels good because it just reminds me of how much potential and opportunity that the creator can give us. If we just give him just a little bit of faith, he gives us so much.
Mhm.
So Crystal actually shot the photo that is the cover for my podcast. I did a photo shoot in 2023 in the summer, and I had been trying to get with you for a little over a year, and I was very clear about what your prices. I thought they were extremely reasonable because you provide such a high quality product. Things would happen, I would get scared, or I just couldn't life. And I'll be honest with you, when I decided to do it, I really didn't have the money, but I was like, and kudos to my sister Amira. She was like, just make the investment, Zayda. And it probably was the smartest thing I ever did. And the photo shoot, I haven't even begun to really use all of the images that you created for me, but it was a very like cathartic experience. And I remember distinctly, I have this thing like when people are really in their element, there's almost like a spiritual experience that happens in the moment. And I distinctly remember watching that happen with you when you were taking my photos. And I was like, oh, I have to have her on my podcast because it was just very connecting to God for me in that moment, just to see that and to see like how he really blesses us with just this amazing talent. Because you've done a lot of great things in your career, but I would love to hear just kind of like about your origins and how you got to where you are now, your story. So I can imagine going to a HBCU definitely was a wonderful start.
Definitely. So, being from the San Francisco Bay Area, I decided to go to Clark Atlanta University. I got accepted into schools back home, but I just was like, something inside of me is telling me I need to go and experience living away from home
Mhm.
because I just felt like if I didn't leave, then I wouldn't ever leave. And coming to a place like Atlanta and seeing a HBCU and seeing where we had just like this level of excellence in this city was truly
Mhm.
inspiring for me. And, growing up in more of an inner city, we didn't necessarily have the inspiration, that you have here in Atlanta when it comes to like, seeing what your full potential could be,
Yeah.
and that I am a graduate and I have seen, and years have gone by. We're going to be going on 20 years in 2020 of graduating, and I've seen the things that my classmates have done. I mean, it was just, I don't know if it was the time or if we were just so dope coming out of that class of
Hmm.
2000, coming into college and all that kind of stuff. But so much had come from that AUC center, and I'm just like honored and blessed that I was able to be a part of that. So I
Mhm.
went and I actually majored in communications. So my intention was that I wanted to work in radio. I had a radio, television, film concentration. Now, while I was in school, I was always involved in radio. So I was the president of the radio station. I was
Mhm.
a music director. I was on air personality. I hosted the homecoming events. I was an MC a lot of
Mhm.
times. So that was just kind of like something that had been ingrained in me. I also was like, I mean, I was doing everything. I was like, I had multiple jobs. Like I worked
Mhm.
as an intern for the Fader magazine. I worked as an intern for Bad Boy when they were
Oh.
kind of like a thing. I was on the southern kind of side. I was doing a lot of things, and I just knew that I was going to work in radio. And I interned for a radio station that no longer exists, and they hired me right out of
Mm.
college. So immediately my first job was working in radio. And I thought that was a big deal because most people didn't have a chance to kind of just go right into their major into the job. So
Yeah.
my first job was in radio. I was in the promotions department. I wanted to be an on-air personality at first. So I was a little bummed out that they put me in marketing and promotions when I was an intern. So I was just kind of like, oh man, I wanted to work in production. I wanted to be with the on air personalities. And I remember my mentor at the time saying, just trust the process. Like, you don't know where this is going to take you. Like, just know most people start off in promotions. So, working in promotions, it was tons of fun, especially
Mhm.
for someone who's just like 20 something year old. We're going to every concert. We're setting up. I mean, we had some grueling days
Mhm.
being out in the sun and holding up flyers and banners and all
Mhm.
that kind of stuff. But it was so rewarding. The friendships that we made, we became like family. We were
Yeah.
really like close. And unfortunately, a few of my colleagues at the time have passed away now. And it really was hurtful to hear that. It just was a really good time.
Mhm.
But unfortunately, when I graduated in 2000, I walked. So I had two classes to finish. So I was continuing my education that next year. And as soon as we were actually finished, in December, in
Mhm.
January, after I had had my job
Mhm.
for like 6 months, finally they hired me and then they put me on, and the job was dissolved.
Mm.
So I was crushed because I couldn't wait to get hired as an intern.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then it was dissolved. And I just really didn't know what to do. Now, mind you, the job was only paying $10 an hour.
That
That's
was that was actually a lot for
for
that
a radio
time.
promotion. So
Yeah.
it wasn't a lot for a radio promotion, but it still
Yeah.
wasn't enough to have a
It
career.
was nothing. Yeah.
And they gave us Cox was real funny because they gave us 29 and a half hours a week.
Mm.
So they didn't want to give us 30 hours because then 29 and a half. Like, how shady is that?
Yeah.
So they gave us 29 and a half hours a week, and then they chopped us down to like 20 hours a week. And then
Wow.
they just dissolved the whole station, right? So, and then they don't tell you when you're in school, and I really just debate the landscape of what audio looks like now is so different, but back
Mhm.
then, what they don't tell you is that there's really not much money to be made in radio, not for a college graduate.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so my boss at the time, I don't know his exact salary, but I feel like it was in the 40s.
Yeah.
And he was the director of the department. So that really wasn't a real good long-term career anyway.
Yeah.
But what
Yeah.
I did, so I was on a severance. I ended up flying back home to visit my mom during that time. And while I was out there, she was like, "Why don't you just see if you can get a job at a radio station here?" And I'm like, "I don't want to move back home. I'm not coming here. I want to stay in
Yeah.
Atlanta.
Yeah.
I'm having fun." I'm like, the party's still going. I just happened to write an email to the radio station out there that I grew up listening to, which was 106 KMEL.
Mhm.
And I just was like, let me just write him a letter. And I saw they were hiring in the sales department. He was like, "Why don't you just come on over?" Came over there. He hired me right then. I was like, dang, I guess
Guess
what am
you
I
are
supposed to
staying
do
in
now?
Cali.
Like, yeah. So they offered me a job. So I was like, okay, well, I got to go back home to California. And I ended up working for 106 KMEL as a
Mhm.
salesperson. Now, salespeople make money in radio. So if you
Yeah.
ever want to work in radio, that's where you have to work to make a career, unless you just are like one of the top DJs, or you are
Mhm.
one of the main people in the radio station, like a full on director, you're going to make
Mhm.
okay money. But the people who make the money are the salespeople, and they can make six-figure salaries. So I knew that that's where I probably should be.
Mhm.
And then they were in one of the top markets. So I felt like, okay, so I'm going to probably have a good chance of being successful because I'm in a top market. Well, unfortunately, right when I moved out there, the market crashed. The
Yeah.
economy crashed. And
Yeah.
it was so impossible for me because there was a few restrictions that I had morally. I did not want to
Yeah.
sell alcohol. I didn't want to do nightclubs. And that's where a lot of people kind of get their footing
Yeah.
with advertising.
Mhm.
So I missed a lot of opportunities. It's sharks. Sales is sharks. So I would be nurturing someone to eventually become my client, and then somebody else came and swooped them up. Like I remember I had a
Wow.
JJ Fish client that I was about to get signed on, and then this guy just came and snatched him up. He happened
Wow.
to know somebody who knew someone and used that relationship to basically take it from right under me. Well, that ended up putting me, that one client could have kept me in the job, but I ended up having to quit at that time because what Clear Channel will do for you is they'll give you 6 months to work with them and they'll pay you a salary. After the 6 months, you're fully on commission, right? And
Yeah.
it was really hard getting mom and pop shops to commit because they weren't making big profits at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
So these people were like talking about, listen, I've got a $2,000 profit. What do I look like giving you 1,200 of it? You know, and then the ads were running in the middle of the night. I didn't feel morally like this could help them,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
four ads a day, you know.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
like that was hard for me. And
Yeah.
then what happened is if Clear Channel were to, if they were to keep you, like if you were to go the 6 months and you're just like, I'm gonna wing it. I know I'm gonna get it next month. They will loan you the money and then you have to pay them back. So to me, that sounds like sharecropping. I'm just leaving the agency.
Yeah.
I know all about sharecropping. Okay.
Mhm.
So I decided that it was better for me to walk away. So
Mhm.
I was really hurt because that was my last moments in radio.
Yeah.
And then it just didn't go the way I wanted it to go. And then from that point on, I just kind of went on this trajectory of freelancing and just trying to like find bits and pieces because the economy was so bad. None of those connections that I had were helping me. And plus, now I'm on the West Coast. I'm stuck. I don't have all the East Coast connections that I had. So
Mhm.
I can't just move from one place to another. This radio conglomerate owns everything. They're
Yeah.
owning all the hip hop stations. So I can't even go to another station. So I ended up doing a lot of this freelance work, just trying to get by for years.
Yeah.
Um, I ended up having to move back to Atlanta.
Mhm.
And at that point, I wasn't necessarily as excited to move back. I had just had my second daughter, Serene,
Mhm.
and I needed the support, so I had to come back here. And then when I got back here, I had to go all the way to the bottom and go back to retail. I had to work in retail. I worked in at Pier One, making
Mhm.
like $8 an hour. I had to take a second job, and I was working for a photography company called The Picture People, which also doesn't exist anymore. They used to take pictures of kids. And the funny thing about that is they would never let me take pictures of the kids.
Really?
I took pictures maybe twice of the kids, and they only put me on the sales floor. So now I'm only selling
Yeah.
the wall art and all of that kind of stuff. And I'm not even on a commission. So it's like I'm getting these people like $300, $500, $1,000 sales. And they ended up after the holiday season, they had a shift in management. And then I was told, my then manager quietly told me something because it was burning her in her heart,
Mhm.
that her district manager asked for them to take me out to basically remove me
Yeah.
because of that thing on my head.
Mm.
Um, she did not want to do that. She
Mhm.
had to say it was for something else, but she wanted me to kind of like take action after that.
Yeah.
But I
Mm.
just was so crushed that,
Yeah.
and I just didn't have the energy to even do that. I forgot to mention one thing before I
Mhm.
left the Bay Area, what I did. Before I left the Bay Area, after I was done working in radio, I had went on just like a kind of a sabbatical, and I had went overseas and went to Yemen and all that kind of stuff. Yeah,
Okay.
I went on
Okay.
the little sabbatical of the eat, pray, love type of thing.
Yeah.
So when I came back, I was no longer interested in radio. All I wanted to do was like nonprofit work.
Yeah.
So I actually stepped into youth development.
Oh, okay.
That's what I'm saying. I've been all over the place. So I ended
Yes.
up working in youth development because of the fact that I worked in promotions. I had outreach
Mhm.
expertise. So they
Yeah.
really wanted someone in there who could do outreach, not just to the youth, but outside of the community. So I was trained in youth development. I worked with high school youth. I managed their social organizations. So
Mhm.
I brought them to conferences and, Black Student Union and all of these things. And it was a really good time. But
Mhm.
unfortunately, I've had 4 children, and
Mhm.
every single pregnancy that I've had, I happened to just by chance be pregnant soon after getting hired. Well,
Yeah.
where we're going, right?
Yeah.
So you don't have protections from FMLA. Is that
Nope.
correct words?
Mhm.
FMLA and this nonprofit agency that is so holy. This nonprofit agency let me go as soon as I went into labor with my child, which was devastating to me because I had such an attachment to the children and to the work. So they let me go because they obviously didn't want to pay for maternal time. But luckily, the at least the state of California had way more leave available
Mm.
to anyone who has it and had a job at the time. So I did have some type of care. But eventually, once that care ran out, is when I had to end up coming
Back to
back
Atlanta.
here to Atlanta. And then soon after I was here, I had Serene, my second daughter, and we were working, those little odd jobs, Pier 1,
Mhm.
um, the picture people. I
Mhm.
worked at a school. I was a administrator, and then they let me go when Serene was born. It was a lot, and I spent many years feeling devastated
Wow.
because I just knew that girl in college was destined to be great. And
Yeah.
for me to be in that state of being humbled so much to where I felt like I was being beat down to
Yeah.
the ground, to where I just was like, wow, I told myself a lie. I told myself that I was going to be great and I'm not. And I
So
told
you were
myself,
internalizing
oh, I totally,
everything. Yeah,
everybody,
everything that was happening. Yeah.
everything. Because the thing is, it's one thing for it to happen like, and it's just a year, but for it to have happened now it went on for 10 years. Like that was like the worst. Like that was the worst. And it still hurts to this day to think
Yeah.
about it because even though I know that everything is at its best plan and things are
Yeah.
great right now, I just feel like there was so much time lost that
Mhm.
things could have been greater right now. Being
Yeah.
that if I would have just had a little bit of help to kind
Mhm.
of get my footing, then things would have turned out a little bit better. So
Yeah.
in
Well,
between
can
these
I
years, yeah, I've had so
if I
many.
don't if I can say something really quickly, I totally understand that and I receive that. And that's especially something that there's so many layers to it, but just kind of tapping to the experience of a Black person in this country. Even when we overextend ourselves out to go to college and take on the debt and so on and so forth, we're still entering a system that makes us work harder,
Yeah.
and so, and very much the dream that is told is, okay, if you go to college, and this is just for everybody, not just Black people, but I have to acknowledge that Black people have different experiences and women have different experiences. We're told if you go to college, you'll be successful, make money, da da da. I had the same narrative to me too. And I worked at Old Navy when I graduated from college. And so I can totally understand where the devastation you felt because it was almost like you were lied to in some aspect that things were going to be so much better than they were, and
Right.
that and I'm glad that you acknowledge that it's something that you're still healing from, because to have to carry that for 10 years straight, it's not something that just completely disappears once things start to get better. Like, you're still
Exactly.
dealing with all of the disappointment
Oh
and
my
the
God.
hurt and yeah, and all of those negative feelings you may felt about yourself, like having to rebuild your confidence. It's
Right.
layered, right?
It is. And especially when, because of the fact that you have not been able to step into a career, then you're also stepped into poverty. Like
Yeah.
I just had years of poverty that wouldn't allow for me to even just do things as simple as go to my sister's wedding. And she
Mm,
had out of the country wedding, and go to my friends' baby showers or be a bridesmaid because I could never afford to get a dress.
yeah.
I wasn't able to even put my kids in camp unless
Mm,
I had a scholarship, and birthdays sometimes would be me taking them to Party City to buy 10-cent candies and go crazy buying
mm,
10-cent candies because I could have $10 worth of candy for them. I could cook food and have people come over instead of me having to go out. So I was able to make things work. But then, like, even after you're not in that same state, you're just consistently traumatized. Like, I remember when I first started making any money, like, I didn't buy underwear for
Mm.
like a minute because I was scared to spend the money because I
Yeah.
wasn't sure, is the money coming next month too? So
Yeah.
there's so much trauma attached to poverty that even when you're no longer in that state of poverty,
Yeah.
mentally and
Physically.
physically,
Yeah.
actually, let's say physically, you still
Yeah,
might be in
but
the state mentally for a
mindset.
while. Like, that's when you
Yeah.
have to have mindset shift, and mindset work was super important to me, and I'm sure we'll probably talk about that.
Well, I
um
was going to ask you what was the shift for you, because eventually, I'm glad that you mentioned the mindset, because sometimes God, the Creator, is always sending us blessings, and
mhm,
we don't have control of the timing, but it's still happening. Sometimes I say you're blocking your blessings. We're not able to receive it because we're still in that mindset of the challenges, of the suffering that we went through. So, like, was there a point where even if your financial situation changed, your mindset changed? Like, what was that point for you where things started to shift for you mindset wise?
right.
And what was the effect of that?
Well, I'm gonna have to go back a little bit with that.
Okay.
So, as I mentioned, I had several jobs. There was a few
Yeah.
jobs that I had. Ended up working for a staffing agency, which then led me to working at the city of Atlanta. Lost my job because when Zayd came, they said, "Oh, we were just a temp anyway," which I didn't know.
Yeah.
So, lost my job then. Ended up working for a religious organization's nonprofit. Lost my job right after having Salma. So, right at that point, I gained some experiences,
Mm-hmm.
but it was definitely like I was right at that point after Salma, after the
Mm-hmm.
one of the fourth one, that was it for me. I don't even remember some of those months
Yeah.
because I'm supposed to be having a joyous moment because I have a child, but I am so stressed out and desperate that I
Yeah.
can't even remember some months of raising my baby. Like, I cannot.
Mm.
And then on top of that, my son, the two youngest ones, the son, was diagnosed with autism about, sometime after her birth. So
Yeah.
there was a lot going on mentally. And I was literally at the probably what they would say a rock bottom at that point. At that point, I just was like, I had always, I know we didn't bring up photography, but I had
Mm-hmm.
pretty much started dabbling with photography when I moved to the Bay Area,
Mm-hmm.
and never really had a chance to learn anything because I could never afford to learn anything. At the time, things were not online. But I had used photography to make little bits of money in those
Mm-hmm.
states of
Mm-hmm.
like not having anything. So I would literally be doing things for like $100, $200. And I remember when I had lost my job with Salma and I was postpartum, but I needed to
Yeah.
get some money. I was trying to sell these photo shoots for $75. I didn't sell one. I
Mm.
didn't sell one. And I was just like, what is going on? And I said, I'm not doing this ever again. F photography, F everything. I started going on my computer and just deleting files. Like, if I always tell people this joke, have you ever seen those movies where the artist just gets mad and he's just like, ah, and he just starts
Yes.
constantly pushing over the chairs, ripping things off the walls. So I did that in
Mm-hmm.
a digital way. So I just started
Yeah.
deleting files. And once I deleted everything and I just was like, I'm done. I remember telling my husband, I think I need to start over again.
Yeah.
I would just have to start all over. I just can't do it the way I've been doing. I don't know what to do. I have no idea. And I started looking on YouTube and I just typed in like behind the scenes of a photo shoot. And I
Mm-hmm.
started noticing people doing things. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And it kind of gave me a little spark. Then, all out of the blue, who's now my mentor,
Mm-hmm.
popped up in a trailer. And the trailer didn't just say, like, oh, watch me do a photo shoot. The trailer went into detail on why photography was important to her.
Mm.
It also said what she wants to do to help other women be able to create not just beautiful photos, but a sustainable business.
Yeah.
So having, and then she had a platform that had like classes and all this stuff. I immediately just ran to that website
Mm-hmm.
and it said that you would have a trial for $7 for the month.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't even have $7.
Mm.
I was able to, I think my husband paid for it, for me, he had $7. So he paid for it. And then he paid for it, I think, for like a couple months. He was able to do that for me. And I obsessed from the moment I would wake up in the morning to the moment I would go to sleep. I'd be breastfeeding my child. I'd be doing whatever I needed to do with the kids. And in between, I'd be on my phone or be on my computer learning. And I just started implementing these things that she was teaching. From the first thing that she talked about were those mindset things.
Yeah.
I joined a Facebook group and they said, this is where you should start. She has tons of videos, but start with, it was something like mindset, but not using that word mindset.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
something like self-value. Start with the
Mm-hmm.
self-value classes. And she really tapped into understanding why you're worth accepting money, why it's okay for you to charge, and all
Yes.
of those types of things, why
Yes.
you shouldn't,
Yeah.
how to step out of fear. It talked a lot about those things first.
Yes.
And I could just hear her voice in my head most of the days, like telling me things. And slowly but surely it got me okay, because I could relate to her, because she had came from poverty. She had came from that. She was from a different country, but she was saying like how she started her photos in the garage. Like she started doing them in the garage. And I said, okay, I can do this. She had videos of her using the most minimal amount of gear, which I didn't have much, to
Yeah.
put together things. Because before I saw things, but it was so intimidating because people had expensive lenses and they had studios and they had all these lights, and it was just too much. And she showed you how to just like take a corner of a room and do a whole photo shoot right there with a window and a corner and a piece of foam board to make the reflection. So it really was truly inspiring. That was the moment. That was the change. And then
Yeah.
also just being in those peer groups
Yeah.
where we had other people who were also doing these classes together. It wasn't like on a schedule. It was just like people who were in there also trying to do the same thing. I'm going to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
I joined in this group and I said, this seems like something that only white people are successful with.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
not only that, but my peers were also saying the same thing, like, well, Black people aren't going to pay for that. I was a little discouraged for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And there was this girl in the group who was not Black, but her story resonated with me. And she was saying that she was from Brooklyn. She was from the projects. She grew up in the housing projects. She had gone through domestic violence. I didn't go through that, but like she had just
Yeah.
gone through so much that she
There was
was
a lot of
in a state
overlap.
of
Yeah.
poverty. She had quite a few children, but she was telling this story of how she literally obsessed over the videos, just like me, and that she was going all or nothing. She was able to take out a loan. I was not able to. I had terrible credit. I was totally shot. Okay. But
Yeah.
she at least had that. She was able to take out a loan. She said she had took out a loan for 20 and bought
Wow.
everything that she needed. And from her backdrops to everything that she needed, she took out the loan and did it. And she said she was all in or nothing. She went hard, and she had 4 clients that first month after she got everything she needed. She explained to us who these people were, that they were regular moms in minivans. You
Yeah.
know, she had her pricing set. She knew that it was all in or nothing. And she said that first month she made $10,000.
Wow.
She said the second month she made 11, and she used every single dime and paid off the loan.
Paid off her loan.
She was
Yeah.
already poor, so it didn't matter to her that she didn't get to hold that money in her pocket.
Yeah. Yeah.
But she had everything she needed, and she never had less than $10,000 since then. I knew she wasn't lying. I had talked to her in the inbox. She was just like, I swear, I just have tunnel vision right now. Like, it has to be this. And I knew at that point, which she said, that I could actually do this. And
Yes.
slowly but surely, a few other people who are women of color started standing up and kind of saying like, this is working for me too. So it really did give like so much inspiration. And a few of us kind of stood out from the group who were sharing our successes, sharing how we were growing in our craft, showing how
Yeah.
we were growing in our skill. And it really did make a difference. I mean, that first year, I didn't make a lot of money, doing photography. I didn't have a lot of clients, but I could feel it coming. And I remember feeling frustrated that it wasn't happening right away.
Oh yeah, I know how that feels.
Yeah, it is feeling like
You're
I've
just
got
like,
all of this in me and I need it to,
yes.
like
Yeah.
you literally just go through that. They say you have to trust the process. And just like after that, I think I did a photo project that your sister was a part of called Worthy.
Yes.
I did it like the experts would have told me I did it all wrong. I didn't charge a session fee, which is like so I could pay for everything. But I had at the time a makeup artist who was able to do the makeup for free. We were shooting out of her apartment. I didn't have a studio. I
Yeah.
borrowed their lights, like everything. We were able to do that project in her space. And from that project, even though I didn't make a ton of money, those people were seeds. And all of those people were the people who referred out to me. And then
Yes.
those people's referrals came to me, which helped build my business. One person in
Subhanallah.
particular just, when she put the word out, they all came running. And I'm still super thankful for her. I still get clients to this day because of her. But because of that one project that I did, it ended up allowing for me to be able to have a business. So the
Yeah.
next year we started introducing things like branding. We started introducing a few different things to get
Yeah.
this mind out of like, oh, she only does this. To she does this, but really she works with women. And that's
Yeah.
what it is. That's the
You
niche. It's like
created
we
your,
work
you
with
started
women.
creating your story.
Exactly. We're
Yes.
empowering women. We're not just here taking pretty pictures, but we are actually like creating things for them that actually serve purpose for them, whether it is an emotional purpose or whether it's business. But it is something that's helping them get to the next level in their life, you know?
Mm,
So, yeah, I mean, mindset was the first thing. It's really hard to get to that point where you feel like you are worthy when you've been poor and people have told
yeah.
you, you know, I
Yeah.
remember somebody telling me, I have $75 to pay you. I was saying, hey, this is going to cost 300. Well, I have $75 for you. And this was someone who was wealthy. And it was like, you felt that I was a charity case.
Yeah.
Therefore, you talk to me this kind of way. So I went from feeling like this is all that I can do because
Yeah.
this is what they said that I can do to,
Mhm.
no, this is my ship. You
Yes.
want to work with me. And I also had to come to the terms, and I try to do this when I talk to my mentees.
Hmm.
I know I don't want to be the photographer that somebody comes to because they're price shopping. I don't want
Yeah.
people saying like, "Oh, go to Crystal, she's cheap." You don't want that. You don't want people
Yeah.
coming to you only because you're the deal. I want people to come to me because they're like, "Man, I have got to have a photo shoot with her one day."
Yeah.
That's what I want. That's what I wanted. So I had to tell myself, no. Like, no
Yes.
matter how tempting it is to just give away everything, to just bend, no matter how broke I might feel right now, I have to stay on this path because this is the only way I'm going to be able to show people what I can do. Because if
Absolutely.
nobody has a budget, I can't buy the dresses in the studio so that you can look elevated. I cannot have the best makeup artist. I'll have to always have the makeup artist who's okay because I can't pay for them. I'll never have a studio, which is my dream to have a studio if
Mhm.
I'm just taking what I can get. So it's like I know the vision, and in order to have the vision, I know that I want to have like these set of lights. Them lights is 300 and I need
Yeah.
two of them. Then I need the modifiers that go over them, which is the umbrellas and all those things that you see. I
Mm.
need all of these things. Well, that's a five investment.
Yeah.
It's how long is it going to take for me to make that five if I only have
Yeah.
$300 coming in? It took a lot of not being afraid to talk to people too. I was scared to be on a phone with someone. I was
Mhm.
definitely scared to talk about money with people. I was
Yeah.
like wanting to just slide the number on a paper and just,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
hard. It's hard to get rejected.
Yeah.
It is so hard to hear somebody tell you to your face, like, sorry, you cost too much. And to hear them say it like in a certain kind of way because they're offended that you have said something like that. I've had people laugh at me that I actually know when I've said like how much it costs and they'd laugh at me. I've
Mm.
had people say like, girl, those are white people prices. You need to photograph celebrities. Like this is not.
That is not a, your prices are not celebrity prices
And then you find
at
out
all.
celebrities actually
They,
don't pay for anything. So they don't
no.
even, they are
And even
worse.
still,
They are
some of
worse.
these people are paying like two, three, four times the amount that you
Oh
charge.
yeah, I mean, like if somebody were to, if you were a brand like Nike and they were to put a production together, they're probably spending 50,000 on a photo shoot. No lie.
Yeah.
They're paying for
Yeah.
lighting techs, they're paying for set design, they're paying for wardrobe, they're paying for
Yeah.
so many people on a team. And the photographer may get like 10 grand out of that, right? Out of the 50K. Think of how much money they're spending. And then I'm like, hey, I'm $2,500. I'm 5,000. Once you look at it that way, you realize that just like with ads, like we can pay for Facebook ads and spend 500 a month, right?
Hmm.
But just imagine that Nike is paying like 10 grand a month. That's why you're not showing up on the feed, sis,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
Nike's over here killing us.
Yeah.
There's only so much that we can do as the everyday person. But at the same time, like the team that's involved behind the scenes, the
Beautiful
work that's
team.
involved, the hours that are involved, like everybody needs to know, like when you have your own business, when you're a service, you have
Mhm.
to not just calculate the actual service, but the amount of hours that are involved in that service from the
Yeah.
top to the bottom.
Yeah. And I wanted to say something
Mhm.
that, and this is something that I've been working on myself. My sister Amir told me to read You're a Badass at Making Money by
Mhm.
Jen Sincero. And um, I was struggled with talking with prices and I would kind of hide about it. And then one day I was just like, I just stopped worrying about whether or not people would hire me.
Mm-hmm.
I was just like, you know what? This is what because you know what it was, and this is something I saw you do. We see a lot of people out there, whatever product or service they have these high market, they have these high prices, but the quality of how they're presenting themselves is garbage, right?
Especially in 2023.
Yes.
I've had my own share.
Yes. And so for me, I was like, until the clients come that will pay my price point, I'm going to continue to improve the quality of the work that I do. So I may not have had a lot of clients this year, but I invested in a branding.
That's a quotable moment. I gotta write that
Thank you. Thank you.
write that down and send it to me later.
I will. I invested in a branding photo shoot, right? I hired someone to help me create my logo. I hired just contract work to help me with some guides and stuff for my clients. I worked on my website. So all of the quality of my work is showing up. So people feel like when they walk away, they got more than what they paid for. Do you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think for people who are wondering, like, should I charge that price? Yeah, you charge it, but you also have to be willing to put the work in
Put the work
that
in.
to provide the quality of service. And I will say for you, with you and your team, I remember the night before I was in my sister's house steaming my clothes. And then I get there and your assistant's like, here, I'm going to steam your clothes. And I was like, oh,
Yep.
I felt so when the people have the opportunity to work with Crystal, I'll say like, you feel special for the day. Right. That was a moment for me where I was so used to, having not allowing myself be the center of attention. But in order for the photo shoot to really be successful, I had to let go of this idea that it's a bad thing for people to want to take care of me and make me feel special. And like, I had to just release that.
Mm-hmm.
And you and your team really helped me. So by the time we were done, you saw the shift in my energy from the first picture to the last. It was amazing. There was something that you said I just want to highlight. When you were deleting all those photos, I feel like what you were deleting was that former part of yourself that was living in a period of just suffering and
Mm.
poverty, and like the part of your spirit that was just really going through it. You said, you know what? I'm going to release it. And it's not to say that that part of you was the reason why you experienced it. That's not what it was. It was that you were saying, I'm not going to allow myself to continue to live in this mental space.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as that happened, you created the space for the creativity to come in, and really just having trust that God was going to bless you in the manner, even if you didn't state it. Sometimes our actions are a form of faith.
Yes.
Right? We don't always have to claim something to be moving in faith, right? And so when you release something and you say, I'm ready to start over, that is a faith decision.
It
Yes.
wasn't even like we overthink so much.
Yes.
Like, okay, next year I'm gonna do this. Next year I'm gonna do this. But literally, I was just like angry and mad and just snapped. Like,
yeah.
In between that time too, like I was still just like not cognizant, obviously, of what was going on.
Yeah.
And I had already started the business, but things were moving so slow.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember two of my friends came over, and I was just like, I had been avoiding people because I was so depressed for so long, and I couldn't go anywhere. Like I would be invited to people's house. Like I remember it was Ramadan and we were invited over to people's house for iftar. And I couldn't even get through anybody's invitation without crying. Like I would be constantly just like not even able to control myself from crying because I was so depressed. And I just started isolating myself. Like I didn't want to see anyone. I didn't want them to see me. And I didn't want them to see me like that. And I remember two of my friends just showing up, like, we're coming over. And one of them was in from out of town. So she was like, no, I'm coming over. And then I just was like breaking down with them. And I remember both of them just sternly looking at me and saying to me, what do you want? And I was like, oh, I don't even remember what I said. But I just remember like, I just want, they were like, okay, sis, but we got to think bigger than that. What do you want? And they were like, put it all out there. And I just started slowly throwing things out there. Like, I'd like to have a studio. Like, yes, you'd like a studio. How big is it? I don't know, but it's big enough to do. But no, how big is it? Like, okay, that doesn't sound big enough. Let's go bigger. And they just literally did that work with me while I was sitting there. And I did not immediately feel like, okay, I'm ready to get to it. But I
Yeah.
could feel how that conversation, I still get chills thinking about it. How almost a whole year later, my whole life had transformed, like from that moment. Because I was already starting the business. I already did the groundwork with it. But I just didn't necessarily believe like I needed to believe that it was about to happen for me.
Yeah.
And literally almost a year later, I'm in the six-figure category from that
I remember
conversation.
when you wrote a post, you're very good at documenting your journey. I really appreciate that. And I remember when you wrote your post about your six-figure business, and it motivated me.
Yeah, I
It
remember that
really
post.
did. Yeah.
I
And
re I
just,
wrote that post that said, "I'm like $2,000 away from it being that." And I think it was literally like the next day I made that $2,000, and I
yeah.
couldn't believe it, and then I made another 80 between September, because that was in September. I made another 80 between September and December.
Yeah.
So I
And
had made like 100.
when did you do
I
the
went
photo
from
shoot? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I felt like I had made like 1 year, I made like 80, like
Hmm.
almost 80K, and then the next year I was literally at 180.
Ooh, subhanallah. Subhanallah. What year did you do the photo shoot with Aziza?
That was that first year.
So that was
That was
2000
when I did
and
the project. That was like 2018 or 19.
so that's only been 4 years.
It's been Yeah, so that's what I'm trying to say.
I'm
So it all happened
like,
very
that's
fast.
not, yeah, that's really fast.
Yeah, but that's how fast it can go, but you just have
Yeah.
to literally just keep networking, keep going up on your prices too. Like when you start seeing
Yes.
people, if you have
Yeah.
tiers, if you I always tell people, if you have a tier system, like maybe you have a smaller package, middle, and big, once you start seeing people consistently buying your big package, you know that that big package needs to be your small package.
Hmm.
You know, then
I'm gonna
or you
go
can
back and
or you
watch
can make
that.
yeah, or you can make the big package your middle package if you're not ready to do that.
Ah,
And then make that other package. You should also have a price. You should also have something on your price guide that is somewhat astronomical, like something you don't really believe that it can happen, but it can. But
yeah.
it's really also your dream. Like for me, my dream shoot is for someone to automatically pay for wardrobe styling, automatically pay for um
Right.
the editorial hairstylist to come for set design, all that
Hmm.
kind of stuff. And then the wall art and all of these things.
Yeah.
Okay, how much would that cost? That might cost like 15, 20. I might not just think that somebody's going to pay that, but you don't
Hmm.
know. You don't know what somebody actually really feels like is a good investment for themselves. So like for me, I know like there's some things that maybe seem out of reach for me right now, but it doesn't mean that it's something I wouldn't really like just put my coins to the side for, right?
Yeah.
I mean, shoot, we can use the Beyonce concert for an example. It was quite expensive.
Tell you how much I paid.
Oh, trust me. I've got the good seats. I got the almost good
Me
seats,
too.
like a nice hefty, and I bought extra tickets, right? So that I could
Hmm.
make sure I had somebody to go with. So I
Yeah.
bought a few extras, and then my friends bought them off of me. And but what I'm trying to say is they had options as well. They had Afterpay, they had
Hmm.
Klarna, they had every type of PayPal now.
Yeah.
You could break it up. You could put it on
Yeah.
your credit card. You could pay in a cash. All these options. So having options also helps with clients,
It
especially
does.
when you have higher tickets. And especially some people have the money, but they just like to break it up. Like there's sometimes I'll have the money, like I'll give you half now and then I'm gonna give you half next week. But I'll
Yeah.
put it like maybe I'll put half of it on my credit card and then half of it I'll
Yeah.
pay in cash, something like that. So I sometimes take advantage of payment plans only because of just my own behavior.
Money story too. Like,
I'll pay off the credit card like in 2 weeks. But I
yeah, I
just
do the
have this
same thing.
thing where it's just so weird. I don't know why I do this, but a lot of people do it.
Yeah, I do the same thing. Well, I've gotten to a point now, and we've done this since we've been married. When I got married, I was like, I'm changing my money spending habits. And so we use
Mm-hmm.
our credit cards as debit cards. I pay it off within the same month. And
Mm-hmm.
it was such a great decision because now I don't buy anything if I don't have the money. And so even with the photo shoot, I borrowed for myself, but I borrowed for money that I had been saving up anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much, Crystal. I wanted to give you the space to share where people can find you. I try to tag you when I use your photos
I appreciate
on
that.
my Instagram, but can you share? And I'm gonna put everything in the show notes too.
Sure. You can find me on my website, which is Crystal on Brand. And then it's the same Crystal on Brand on Instagram. I also have another page that you can find via
Hmm.
that Instagram page, which is Love Bird Photo. Love BYRD photo. And you can find Love Bird Photo for my portrait work.
Okay,
I'm pretty
beautiful.
much
And
on
I
every social media.
every social media and two Instagrams, two websites, so it's very easy. And
Yep.
your website is very searchable. Like you know how you
Okay.
put in certain
Yeah, I
keywords
got
and it
the
pops right
SEO.
up.
Yeah, see, those are other
Yeah,
things you gotta start paying. Like, I'll just say this last tidbit.
yeah. Go ahead.
Once you start a business and you start to get at the point where you're scaling a little bit, you'll start to realize, okay, now it's time to invest in
Oh
those
yeah,
things, and everything is expensive. I'm just letting you know, like you kind of start getting used to spending a lot more money because you've had to make those investments. You start to see the return.
yeah,
I know my website was like I spent $10,000 for both of my websites. But I spent one at one time and then one at the other. I didn't get both of them done at the same time. But just
uh,
to imagine that I spent that much money on websites, but I think that it was worth the investment, because it
yeah.
gives me the complete aesthetic of what it is that I'm trying to.
Yeah, as a photographer, the website is
It's super important.
crucial. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
And
it's
then,
crucial.
I've done things like I've spent money on so many things like accounting. Having to have a really good accountant is super important, costs a lot of money. Like,
Yeah,
oh my God, it's just like on a retainer. Like it's
yeah,
it definitely feels some kind of way. I have a VA now. I do have to
yeah,
pay every single month for the VA. So you do start getting used to spending money, but it is definitely a challenge. But it also keeps you motivated because you know you have to make a certain amount every month to be able to maintain the actual business. So you have your
yeah.
goals that you have to make, and
And you
that
know
kind
what? The more that you do, the more that you make investments and you start to see a return, the more it encourages you to just keep pushing forward
yeah, and then
instead of,
making the investments. You just have to be careful. I will want to just give people the advice of being
mhm,
careful about who you spend your money with. Make sure that you
yeah,
are doing the research on these people. If they have referrals, referrals are always great. If you could see the work, whether it's a photographer or any type of service, if you could see the work that they have done, or at least get some good ideas of people they've worked with,
hmm
that can vouch for them, it always helps. Or even just having conversations with people, it's very important. I've had plenty of times where I have sent people money and then they've disappeared,
yeah,
or I've set up one-on-one consultations with people who promise to be able to help people, and there's kids playing in the background and then they've got to call me back, and it's totally unprofessional. So I understand that people can be apprehensive about making these types of investments, but I think that if you learn how to do the research, then it will be so much better for you to be able to continue to grow in your business.
that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Thank you
You're
so much. Thank you. Everybody go check out Crystal's work. It's amazing. And I highly recommend her.
Thank
Highly,
you.
highly.
Thank you.
Thank you.